Yep.
All right, good.
Got it.
Well, yeah, and thank you, Aaron, for leading the way on this. And I'm just gonna add some more detail on the strategic wood addition part of it. We've worked closely with Trout Unlimited since the beginning of this in northeastern Vermont. And I'm gonna focus on some follow-up questions. Why would we do this and where? Just giving some more details. Everything I'm gonna talk about and a lot of what Aaron talked about and more beyond that, you can find in the Vermont Strategic Wood Addition Handbook, which is available on our website. So you could find that with a Google search, or if you have any trouble, just contact me and I can get a copy to you. We just have it as PDF, but very good resource. So yeah, what I want to talk about is, again, why we would use strategic wood addition to add wood to streams and where it's appropriate, where it's the right tool for the job. First question, why would we add wood to streams at all? And that's because a lot of our streams in Vermont, and I'm guessing in a lot of your states as well, look like this. And to the uninitiated, this just looks like a natural stream. And that's because we are several generations removed from when streams really look the way that they used to look, the way that they're supposed to look, because of things like log drives. There's a river underneath all those logs. This is in, I think this is the White River in Vermont. But this happened all over the eastern United States. And when you want to float logs downstream, you don't want obstructions in the channel. So they pulled the wood out of the streams. They dynamited boulders, straightened the channel in places. And then on top of this, even in places where we didn't drive logs, we cut the forests down to the stream bank multiple times in most cases. So we don't have big old growth forests growing along our rivers with big trees that are falling in and creating natural wood jams like this one here. This is a nice natural wood jam, but the trees are small compared to what they would have been in the past. But I show this to stop and point out that the priority is really to reestablish the natural process of natural wood recruitment by protecting our riparian forests, allowing them to grow and do their thing, providing all the benefits that they do to streams. And one of those benefits is large woody material that falls in. And then the other thing is that once wood is in the stream, we want to leave it there. This is something that we see in Vermont. I'm guessing you see it in your states as well, where we will often have a log jam or a tree fall in the stream, and we'll get a call that says, "You guys need to get that out of there," or this is bad. We need to get it out, because they think it's either dangerous or it's ugly, or actually in some cases people think that wood in the stream is bad for fish habitat. So that's one of the really main driving reasons for doing strategic wood addition, is to communicate to people that we want wood in the stream so much that we're willing to go do it ourselves. This isn't, the fix-all, because what we want to see ultimately is the natural process restored, but we're doing this to get that natural process jump-started and to communicate to people the value of our streamside forests and of wood in the streams. So again, continuing on the question of why we would add wood to streams. Now, most of you know, I'm sure, the benefits of wood in our streams, but just as a review, this is a list of the functions that our added wood is performing, which are the same functions that natural wood jams would perform. And this is from the structures that we build on our larger streams. So like large third order, fourth order streams, those are streams where they're big enough that we know that the wood has a better chance of moving. So on these, we have monitored these every year. We put a tag in them and we go out and monitor them. So of these, we have 575 structures that we've been able to follow through at least 1 year. We've got a lot more structures on small streams that we haven't really looked at, but these are on the bigger ones. Yeah, there's a list of functions there. One thing I want to highlight here is that most of these are still performing at least one function where we originally put them, just to show that they're mostly staying where they're put. But yeah, just to walk through the benefits of retaining organic material. This is one that you all know about, but a lot of people don't think about that. But the base of the food web in these headwater streams comes from the surrounding forest with organic material that falls in. And when we have channels that are really good at transporting water, sediment, organic material, like most of our channels are, that stuff just blows right out. So by adding wood, by adding roughness to the channel, we're capturing that organic material, capturing the leaves, letting them decompose in the stream where they become food for insects and food for fish. We're retaining sediment, and yeah, Aaron mentioned this. On the left there is an aerial photo from a drone, and on the right side of that picture is the upstream side of a pool that was created by some wood that we added. And you can see that the stream bed looks lighter. That's because there's a lot of fine sediment that has been captured there. And this is something that we want to happen up here, that we're up in the headwaters. These are streams that typically have just passed the sediment downstream down to places where we don't necessarily want it. But we're trying to capture it up here because that contains organic material. And it's also, we're capturing gravel for spawning and that kind of thing as well. Also keeping it up in the headwaters rather than letting it go downstream where we already have too much sediment. Also narrowing the low flow channel. A good picture on the right there that shows how you can see some sediment accumulating in the background there. But during low flows, the surface area of that channel is smaller, so which means less exposure to the sun and to the hot air. So in theory, reducing water temperature, and that's something we haven't been able to demonstrate yet, but it's something I'm going to be looking at in future years. And then just scouring, making the channel deeper. When you go narrower, you have to make the channel deeper, and that's good for fish habitat. Forming pools, we all know how important pool habitat is to brook trout and other fish. And then increasing floodplain access. In some cases, we're able to put enough wood into the channel where we're able to push some flow during high flow into the forest. We're working up in areas where there's very little infrastructure. And this is something we want to do by, instead of letting that water just come rushing down off the mountains down to where everybody lives, we want to slow that runoff up here, let it get out into the forest, let it drop sediment, let the water percolate in. So reducing flood risk downstream. And then, as I mentioned, they don't all stay where we put them, especially on the larger streams. But that doesn't mean that they're a loss. They usually end up on another structure or on an outside bend or on a boulder where they're still performing functions. It's just not where we originally put them. But as we talked about already, this is something that you have to think about where you're going to work, make sure that you're far enough above bridges and culverts and have a place for things to settle out before it would cause any problems there. So now the big question, especially for this group, is, so what does this all mean for brook trout? And early on, we did a study from 2012 to 2017 where we asked that question. And we ended up in the final study, we had 9 pairs of control and treatment sites on some streams in northeastern Vermont. We had 2 years of pre-treatment data, and then we had 4 years of post-treatment data. And the treatment was, we added wood basically everywhere but the control sites. So added wood to the treatment sites and everywhere else. Control sites we did not add. And as you can see, the design was the control sites were kind of mixed in close to the treatment sites. And here's the results. This is showing brook trout biomass. So this is incorporating the numbers and the size. And one of the questions early on was, how do you know you're not just concentrating fish in areas of good habitat, pulling fish out of the control sites? And that's what happened the first year, which isn't surprising. You can see there the control sites went down while treatment sites went up. And we kind of expect that in hindsight anyway, because the population doesn't have enough time to respond. You need a couple generations before you get your numbers built up to where they can occupy all the habitats. And sure enough, that's what happened. The treatment sites continue to go up. And the control sites, even there, you can see by the end of the study, we had more brook trout in our control sites than we did before we added wood, even though we didn't add wood to the control sites, which really isn't that surprising, because I talked about the benefits of adding wood. we're capturing that organic material. So in theory, we're increasing the overall productivity of the stream. And we also have, maybe we have more young of the year being produced in those treated areas, and they're spilling over into the control sites. So what we found was that we saw an overall increase in brook trout in the system in places that we added wood and places that we didn't add wood. So that's the question of, why would we use strategic wood addition to add wood, because of all those benefits that I just mentioned. The next question is where is it the right tool for the job? And under this one, I'm going to cover 3 main questions and then some sub questions under those. And all these, and I'm not going to cover all of the questions. I'm going to cover the 3 big ones, but I'm not going to cover all of the other sub questions. I'm just going to hit the highlights. All of this is laid out in the handbook. And I suggest you take a look at that if you're interested in doing this kind of thing. So the first of the big questions is, will adding large wood improve aquatic habitat? Will large wood benefit fish populations? And this one's important, especially for this group, because we care about brook trout, but that might not always be important for every project because of all the other benefits to wood. But then the third one is, can large wood be added safely and effectively? All right, so under that first question of will it improve aquatic habitat, I'm just going to hit a couple of the sub questions that go under that. First one is large wood loading in the channel substantially less than it should be? Usually this is going to be a yes, just because of our past land use practices in the East. But there are some maximum limits. We did a study that was published back in 2013, and we found what we observed as our maximum limit of wood in streams, which interestingly came out to be very close to the maximum limit that was observed by another study. And so that included some old growth forests. So we know when we get up to that end that, maybe that already has enough wood, we don't need to add any, but it's rare that we see that. Next big one is the slope and width appropriate for large wood? What this is getting at is kind of stream power and stream type, because large wood is not an important habitat feature in every type of stream, because some streams, they're going to, blow out the wood, or if they have wood in them, it's not going to really perform much of a function beyond what's already there. Because, you have a powerful stream, and that's probably going to be bedrock and boulder dominated. The boulders are probably going to be performing all of the functions that wood would perform. So in those cases, probably don't need to add wood, but it's in that sweet spot here. This is a figure from Oregon. It's also included in our handbook, and I believe Maine pulled numbers off of this for some of their guidelines that shows that there's a certain type of stream power based on slope and bankful width, which is the sweet spot to add wood. All right, next one is, can the target wood loading be achieved without significant negative effects on riparian zone functions? Aaron talked about this a little bit. Obviously, you need to have enough, if you're going to use this technique, you need to have enough wood on the stream bank where you can cut some trees and you're not going to be losing significant amounts of shading or the other functions that the forest would perform. And then, is there a long-term plan for restoration of natural wood recruitment processes? So as I said earlier, we don't want to have to keep doing this. This is just to jumpstart a natural process. And so we want a long-term plan in place. So it's it's good to be working in places that are private lands that are conserved, or on state lands or federal lands, someplace where that forest is going to be able to grow and start adding wood on its own. All right, next one of the big 3 questions there was, will large wood benefit fish? And this one, the main question here, especially for brook trout, is water temperature. If the water temperature is too warm, you're probably not going to have brook trout there. You're going to add wood, and you're probably still not going to have brook trout. So if you want to do a project that benefits brook trout, make sure that water temperatures are right. Pretty straightforward. And then the last of the big questions was, can the wood be added safely and effectively? And there's actually a lot of a lot of sub questions under this one that you can find in the handbook, but I'll just cover two. The first one is, are the people implementing the project competent? There's a small but growing number of people that are trained and experienced in this, but it's really not that complicated. Really, just about anybody can learn to do this, but there is some learning to do. And the best way to learn is with monitoring. So I really encourage anyone that wants to get into this that they should have some kind of plan for monitoring, and they don't need to go into all the detail that we did. We did that study on fish, and that took a lot of effort. But there should be at least some plan to go back, and you don't have to look at every piece of wood that you put in or every structure that you build, but at least some subset of the structures. There should be a plan to go back and look at those for multiple years, because that's really how you get to be an expert. That's how you learn to do this. You learn what works and what doesn't. And with that, I'll just take any questions you might have. And that, Aaron talked about the work that we've done in northeastern Vermont. At this point, we've hit 50 stream miles, and we've been able to estimate that based on that, we have roughly 60,000 more brook trout in our streams as a result of this work, annually. So it's been exciting, and if we have time for questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Judd. Yeah, we do have time for questions, Dave.
Yeah, we've done some wood additions in streams, and we also have a very enthusiastic whitewater paddling population in West Virginia. Have you had any user conflicts with paddlers or feedback from them?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't had that because the streams that we're working on are not big paddling streams. The ones that are popular with our kayakers tend to be really steep and bouldery, and they're places that I wouldn't be adding wood anyway. With the gradients that we're working on, in theory, they could be for kind of more flat water canoeing, but even with that, these streams are really kind of shallow, and no one would really bother canoeing. So I guess we've been fortunate in working in places where that hasn't been a big deal. One place that has been an issue in Vermont is on the Battenkill River. That's a much larger system. They're using different techniques there. They're not using our strategic wood addition techniques. They're using big machines to put things in place. And that's really popular with canoeing and tubing. And they've actually designed those in such a way that they would not interfere. And specifically, that's such a large system that they're able to kind of just build stuff on the edges of the channel and leave room for people to go down the middle.
We'll take a question in the chat from Barry. Hey, Barry, good to see you. Judd, did you publish results of the wood experiment?
Yes, there's two publications. One was that 2013 study that was the preliminary work where we looked at what factors were most limiting brook trout biomass in northeastern Vermont. And that study showed water temperature was most important, and then the amount of large wood in the streams was actually second. The second study was published in 2018, and that one was on our actual evaluation of the effects of wood on trout, and that was published in North American Journal of Fisheries Management. And if anybody wants either of those or both, feel free to reach out to me. They are cited in the handbook as well, so you'd be able to find them that way.
Thanks. Dan?
Hey, Judd, two quick questions. Could you touch again on the sweet spot for slope where you're placing these structures?
Yeah, I'll see if I can go back to that. Yeah, so right there. Yeah, so that white area there, it's because it's dependent on the bank full width and the slope, but as a general rule, when you're down in the 2% slope or less, it's about the gradient. But the challenge on the upper end on the bank full width is that, well, the easiest places to do this and get your wood secure is when what I call small streams. And by small stream, in my vernacular, that means a stream where the bank full width is, well, yeah. The average size height of the trees on the bank is about 2 times the bank full width. So basically the idea is your trees are large relative to your channel, and you can drop them in, and you don't have to worry much about them moving. You don't have to really, in those cases, we don't even use the grip hoist to position things. We're just aiming the trees, putting them down. We might do some hand positioning. It's when you get above that where you start to need to use the grip hoist. And then at some point you get to the point where your trees are just so small relative to the channel that they probably aren't going to have much of an effect.
Thanks. And then could you touch on kind of quantity versus quality? Is there like a trade-off, or where adding too many trees, you're not really benefiting biomass, or have you reached that yet?
I guess really the upper end, which I don't think we've ever hit. Maybe we've gotten close in some cases, but the upper end that we would use would be, if you're getting to that point where you have more trees than you would find in the old growth system there, the numbers that I had laid out there. You're getting up to that point, that's probably too much. Not that, and we haven't looked to see if you had more wood, would you see more fish at that point? It's just kind of like, that's what's the natural upper limit. So it probably makes sense to not exceed that. And practically speaking, I don't think we usually don't get close to that.
Thanks. Good. Thank you very much. That was great. We're going to take a break, and let's be back here around 10:20, please. Thanks.